Hello, my name is Steve. Today we're going to set up a PPPoE connection using this router. It's an 1841 router. And let me get you familiar with this router. I'll do a show run. You can see there's really nothing set up other than a few things under the console, which just makes life a little easier. I will have another video that explains some of those, what they do, and some tips and tricks on how to set up a router or switch. Next, show IP int brief. You'll see the interfaces that we're using today is the fast Ethernet 0. There's a couple fast Ethernet ports on this, couple serial ports on this. You notice there's no other interfaces, but that will show up later. It'll be basically a virtual interface that we're going to need for the PPPoE connection. Let me do a show IP route just to show there's really nothing being routed. There's nothing on this router. So now first thing we're going to do is get into configuration mode. Second, we need to create that dialer interface. So to do that, we do interface dialer, and now you can select anywhere from 0 to 1199. We'll just pick 1. In that interface, we have to select an IP address. So let's do that. Now you can see normally you would think DHCP for a dynamic IP. However, with PPP connections, we need to use negotiated. So we're going to use negotiated. Now with negotiated, it will not give you a default gateway. So there is another command that we have to use, or you can use a static route, but we're going to use the PPP command for the default gateway. So next we want to create the encapsulation. We got to pick what encapsulation type that we're using. And I'll show you what options we do have. Typically it would be either frame relay or HDLC. We're going to use, of course, PPP today. Now, since we're using PPP, we need to set up the authentication. And the service provider that I'm using uses PAP, basically, which is clear text. Yours may use CHAP, which is basically a hash of the password. If that's the case, you would use CHAP, but today we're going to use PAP for this demonstration just because that's what my ISP. So yes, it is clear text that we're going to be sending through. Next, you'll see that if you leave it by default and hit enter here, it'll do like a bidirectional, which means that even though it's clear text, it will try to authenticate with your ISP, then the ISP will try to authenticate back. Now, that's not how I'll be doing it here. My ISP only requires that I authenticate with them, and that's it. So in that case, we'll have to use calling. Next, we want to set up, of course, the username and the password. Sent. And for username, we will use my B1 ID, which happens to be a Bell internet connection. And now, of course, password, which is ABC123. Those of you who see this, that password will change. Next, we want to, this is the command that we'll need to set up now for to set up a default route. We want to use the IP control protocol, and I'll show you not too many options. We're going to use the route, and you can see here is install default route through negotiated peer IP addresses, which is what we're doing. And then enter. I think we're good there. Now, we do have to enter one more thing, which is the dialer pool. This is basically what ties in this virtual interface or this PPP profile to an actual Ethernet right here, this Ethernet interface. Right now, we're just building this virtual profile in here. We have to tie it in to this actual physical interface. So, and to do that, we actually have to create, basically, it's like a profile name, essentially, is what it is. Dialer. And it will be pool. So you can see. And you can pick anything from 1 to 255. This number does not have to be the same as what we use for the interface number. We can just use our number. We'll use 10. Now this number will have to match what we set up in the Ethernet interface, so we will have to remember that number. So next we'll do a no shut, and we'll exit out of that interface, and now we have to actually go into the fast Ethernet interface, /0, enter. No IP address, because our address will be associated with our virtual, that PPP interface that we just created, so we do not want one on this interface. It's basically just an interface that we're using to create the PPPoE connection. This is going to forward it wraps the PPP in the Ethernet frame and sends it out this port, so we don't need any IP address here. And of course we have to enable it for PPPoE. And this is where we tie in the actual profile. As you can see, dash client, oops, dialer pool number, and this is where we would use 10 to match. So 10, enter, and no shut to enable the port. And that really should be it. Ethernet, we're up on Ethernet, so let's back right out and do a show IP. Here we go. It's actually coming up right now, which is perfect. So let's do a show IP int brief. There we go. Look at that. Our dialer interface is up and up. We got our IP address, our public IP address. Everything is working perfect. Let's do a show IP route. There we go. Our default route set to go out. Perfect. So let's try it out. Let's do a ping. Look at that. And that's how you set up a PPPoE connection with a Cisco router. Now, you can ping out. Just keep in mind, NAT is not set up. So as for this PC, if you want to get on the internet, he wouldn't have much luck. You would need to create a NAT set up in this router in order for him to actually get out onto the internet, and then it would come back, of course. So look for that in another video on how to set up NAT using a dialer interface like we set up for a PPPoE connection.